In a new book entitled Michelle Obama, in her own words, she reveals her first impressions of her husband-to-be. She says, I thought I've got nothing in common with this guy. He grew up in Hawaii. Who grows up in Hawaii? And then it's a funny name, Barack Obama. Who names their child Barack Obama? So were our first impressions of our chaps equally as perplexing? Or were they spot on?
Well, I mean to say, who calls their child Mr. Spain? My first impression, he got out of this red sports car and I said to my friend, oh my goodness, look at that Jack the Lad. And I was absolutely right. He is a bit of a Jack the Lad, but what's really nice is that he twinkles, and he twinkled and he still twinkles. And whereas some people who twinkle have no substance, and you know, underneath he's as straight as a die, Michael. What you get?
Twinkles.
Well, he is very twinkly. He still twinkles and he flirts.
Twinkly, but he's got depth.
Yeah, but he isn't just after one thing only. You know. He saw the other me. Yeah, well, there you are.
What about your first impression of your Mark? Because we were all there, and we witnessed the first impression of you and your
all there,
Mark.
Because it was end of term party, wasn't it, for this? Just coming up for a year, nearly a year now.
It was a good impression in the first 2 minutes, really, wasn't it?
It was great. I was slightly drunk, I have to say. So I was a little bit hazy, but, you know, my first impression was obviously visually. I just thought, core. Seriously.
And you didn't exactly play hard to get, did
I didn't
you?
play hard to get, no. I reckon it was probably about 10 minutes before we were snogging in front of everybody. But anyway, you know, it's still going on, so it wasn't just a, you know, little one night stand. But he did come back to my house that night, and we did sit up till about 4 o'clock in the morning, drinking and talking.
They don't believe you.
No, actually, nothing happened that night, believe it or not. He just came back, and when he left in the morning, this is, you know, well documented, he left and he didn't take my phone number and I didn't take his. I didn't see him for a couple of weeks. But when I did see him again and we went out, like, where we weren't drunk or anything, we had a really long talk, and I found out lots of things, like he really loves travelling and he'd been to a lot of places that I'd been to that I really liked, and lots of other things that he said that I thought, this is a really good sign. You know, there is something more to him, and you know, he's not just some guy who's just
Loads
sort of
in common.
Yeah. So you know, and it's worked out. It's worked out really well. So I was kind of right about him.
Well, I of course, my family and my husband's family live next door to each other on the Isle of Arran, and so I've known him for a long time. But if I think about my sort of strongest, earliest memory of him is probably about 10 years ago. His mum and dad always have a party on Christmas morning at their house, and it's always absolutely heaving, mobbed, and sort of sitting on the stairs with him and just thinking, he's so lovely. He was just so lovely. And I had my best friend Michael with me, and Michael was sort of like, and I said, no, he's not single, don't be silly. And so that's my first sort of memory of him, was that Bridget Jones meeting at the Christmas party moment. But this is not this is slightly more squirmy as his first memory of me, because he's slightly younger than I am.
He's a lot younger.
Thank you. His first memory of me is when I was 20 and he was 13.
That's just sick.
And he asked me to say, he'd broken his arm. He was going along on a moped and he crashed into one of his dad's cows and he'd broken his arm, and he asked me to sign his cast. That's his. I was 20 and he was very young.
It's not right. Oh, Raimondo, let's talk about that. When I first met Raimondo, I thought he was the biggest div I'd ever met. Honestly, first impressions, I thought, who is the absolute div?
Why did you think that? Why?
Because when I walked in with my sister and he was at the bar with all his friends and he smiled at my sister, so we smiled back, and he looked at me and he stopped smiling, he turned his back on me and all his friends started laughing, and I just thought, oh, what an absolute idiot. And I was right. That's why he's the man for me. We get on so well, two idiots together, you can't beat it.
But at what point did that change then?
It was explained why that had happened, and it's a long story, so I won't go into it. But by the end of the night, then we started chatting, and then we have laughed literally for the last 9 years. It's just been.
But how long from that meeting? Just remind people, from that meeting to baby. About a month, wasn't it, or something?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Don't exaggerate, Carol.
Yeah.
I needed to get to know him.
Of course.
First.
Right.